Peace is most often felt as a calm that settles over a place, a sense that nothing will hurt you, and a feeling that people get along. In everyday life, peace looks like a quiet walk in a park where the only sounds are birds and a soft breeze. It also looks like a family dinner where no one raises their voice, where food is shared and laughter fills the room. Those moments are simple, but they show the three ideas that most people use to define peace: calm, safety, and harmony. Calm is the first part of peace. It is the quiet that lets a mind rest. When a lake has no wind, its surface is smooth and still. In the same way, a calm mind does not ripple with worry. Safety is the second part. It means that no one feels threatened, that the body and the heart can relax. If a child can play on a street without fear of traffic, safety is present. Harmony is the third part. It is the sense that people or things fit together without clash. When a choir sings in tune, each voice matches the others and the music flows. That matching feeling is what harmony means in peace. Two everyday examples bring these ideas to life. Imagine a person strolling along a tree-lined path in a city park. The path is clean, the benches are empty, and a few people sit reading. No sirens blare, no arguments echo. The person feels the cool shade, hears the rustle of leaves, and notices a small squirrel gathering nuts. The calm of the park, the safety of a place where nothing sudden happens, and the harmony of people sharing the same space all combine to create peace. The second example is a family dinner at home. The table is set, the smell of soup fills the air, and each family member takes a turn speaking. No one interrupts, no one shouts, and the conversation moves from the day's events to plans for the weekend. The calm of a settled evening, the safety of a home where each person is cared for, and the harmony of shared stories make the dinner a pocket of peace. Even with clear examples, some people raise objections. One common objection says that peace is only the absence of war. In this view, peace exists only when armies stop fighting and borders are quiet. The objection points out that a city can be free of war but still have crime, poverty, or daily stress, and therefore cannot be truly at peace. The second objection claims that peace is unrealistic. It argues that human nature is always in conflict, that competition and desire for power will always cause tension, and that a world without any conflict cannot exist. These objections are simple, but they open the floor for deeper thinking about what peace really means. To answer these objections, it helps to look back at history. In ancient Greece, the agora was a bustling farmers' market where traders from many villages came to sell olives, figs, and pottery. On most days, the market was a place of calm exchange. People stood in line, weighed their goods, and spoke politely. Even when disagreements arose over price, the crowd would step in, listen, and find a compromise. The market showed that peace could be more than just the lack of war. It could be a daily practice of safety and harmony in trade. A quote from the Greek playwright Aristophanes, spoken in a comedy, says, "A city that trades in peace will grow richer than one that fights." That line captures the idea that peace can be a living condition, not just the end of battle. A different story comes from medieval Japan. In a mountain valley, a small village called Takeda lived under the rule of a local lord who prized stability. The villagers were farmers, weavers, and potters. When neighboring clans threatened to raid, the lord gathered the villagers and said, "We will keep the fields safe by keeping our hearts calm." The villagers agreed to settle disputes with a council rather than with swords. Over many years, the village avoided bloodshed, and its fields remained fertile. The story of Takeda shows how a community can choose harmony over conflict, turning peace into a habit rather than a fleeting pause. The samurai poet Fujiwara no Taker wrote, "When the wind of war ceases, the rice will grow tall." The words remind listeners that peace can bring real, tangible benefits. These anecdotes illustrate that peace can be built into daily life, not just declared after a war ends. They also answer the objection that peace is only the absence of war. In both the Greek market and the Japanese village, peace was an active process of people working together, listening, and solving problems without violence. The stories also speak to the objection that peace is unrealistic. The villagers and traders showed that groups of people can choose calm and safety even when threats loom. To understand peace better, it helps to use analogies that relate to everyday experience. Think of peace as a garden. A garden needs soil, water, sunlight, and regular care. If a gardener neglects any of those, the plants wilt. In the same way, peace needs calm thoughts, safe surroundings, and harmonious relationships. When one part is missing, the garden or peace suffers. Another analogy is a clock. A clock works when each gear turns smoothly with the others. If a gear sticks, the whole clock stops. Peace works when each person's actions fit with those of others. If one person acts harshly, the whole system can break down. These simple pictures make the abstract idea of peace easier to see. Real-world applications of peace show up in many places. In schools, teachers create quiet reading corners where students can sit without noise. Those corners give students a calm space to think, a safe place away from the hustle of the hallway, and a chance to work together on projects without argument. In neighborhoods, community watch programs bring residents together to look out for each other. The program builds safety by reducing crime, creates calm by keeping streets quiet at night, and builds harmony as neighbors learn each other's names. Both examples show how the three parts of peace can be applied in modern life. Modern thinkers also expand the idea of peace. Some say that peace is not just about external calm, but also about inner calm. When a person learns to breathe slowly and notice thoughts without judgment, that inner calm spreads to the outside world. The practice of mindfulness, taught by teachers like Thich Nhat Hanh, says, "When you are at peace inside, you bring peace to the room." This view links the calm of the mind with the safety of the body and the harmony of relationships. Later sections of the video will explore how inner calm can help resolve conflict, and how conflict can test the strength of peace. Another modern interpretation looks at peace as justice. The philosopher John Rawls argued that a society can be at peace only when its rules treat everyone fairly. If a law favors one group, the calm may be broken by protests. In this view, peace and justice walk hand in hand. The idea is simple: safety for all, calm for all, harmony when everyone feels heard. This view will be revisited when the video examines how conflict arises from unfairness. Quotes from primary sources give voice to the past. The ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius wrote, "When the people are at peace, the ruler is at peace." This line shows that peace is a two-way street between leaders and citizens. The Roman writer Cicero said, "True peace is not merely the absence of war, but the presence of justice." Both quotes echo the three parts of peace: calm, safety, and harmony. They also remind the audience that peace has been a concern for thousands of years. The everyday examples, the historical anecdotes, the analogies, and the quotes all point to a core definition. Peace is a state where calm settles over the mind and the world, where safety makes people feel free from danger, and where harmony lets people live together without clash. It is not only the silence that follows a battle, nor is it a fantasy that can never be reached. It is a daily practice that can be seen in a park walk, a family dinner, a farmer's market, or a mountain village. When the video moves on to discuss conflict, it will show how the lack of any of the three parts can lead to tension. When calm is broken by sudden noise, when safety is threatened by a bully, or when harmony is lost in a disagreement, conflict can rise. The next part will also show how inner calm, the kind taught by meditation, can stop a small spark from becoming a fire. By keeping the mind steady, a person can stay safe from anger and help others stay calm too. To close this section, the narrator reminds the listener that peace is both a feeling and an action. It can be felt in a quiet moment, but it also requires people to act with care. The calm of a park, the safety of a home, the harmony of a shared meal, the market in ancient Greece, and the Japanese village all show that peace can be built, not just waited for. The next chapters will explore what happens when peace is broken, and how the same tools of calm, safety, and harmony can help repair it. The journey from peace to conflict and back again will be guided by stories, simple ideas, and practical steps that anyone can try in daily life. The early thoughts on peace in ancient cultures show how people tried to calm the heart and the world long before modern politics took shape. In the gardens of ancient China, Confucius taught that peace begins with the right way of being. He said, "If you govern by virtue, the people will be at ease and the land will be calm." This simple line points to a belief that a ruler's inner goodness spreads outward like a warm fire. The idea is that a leader who respects others, who listens, can keep the community from breaking into fights. In the hills of India, the Buddha offered a quiet way to see peace. He taught, "Real peace comes from within. Do not seek it elsewhere." The Buddha's words tell a listener that the storm inside the mind must settle before any outside calm can appear. He asked people to look at their own thoughts, to let anger melt like ice in the sun. The Buddha's method was not about laws or armies. It was about a mind that does not cling to desire. When the mind is still, the world feels still too. Further west, the ancient Greeks heard about peace in the songs of Homer. In the Iliad, a weary warrior cries, "Let us cease the fighting, for the gods have grown tired of our quarrels." The line shows a longing for a pause in endless war. In the Odyssey, the hero returns home and finds that a peaceful hearth is the greatest treasure. Homer's verses paint peace as a safe harbor after a stormy sea of conflict. These three thinkers, Confucius, the Buddha, and Homer, share a common thread. They each see peace as something that starts inside a person and then spreads outward. They also see peace as a daily practice, not a distant ideal. To make this clear, imagine a family sharing a meal. When each person brings a dish, the table becomes full. If everyone respects the turn to pass the bowl, the meal stays calm. If one person grabs too much, the peace breaks. The same idea works for peace in a city. Each citizen adds a small act of kindness, and the whole community feels steady. Another simple picture is fixing a broken toy. A child sees a wooden horse with a cracked leg. The child does not smash the toy. Instead, the child gathers glue, lines up the pieces, and works slowly. The toy is whole again, and the child feels calm. In the same way, a society can patch up a broken relationship by careful work, not by shouting. The act of fixing shows that peace needs patience and gentle effort. Yet not everyone agreed that peace could be so gentle. One counterpoint came from thinkers who believed that peace required strict rules. In ancient China, the legalist school argued that only harsh laws could keep order. They claimed that without punishments, people would act selfishly and chaos would return. This view says that peace is a fragile vase that must be guarded by strong hands. The legalist perspective warned that a ruler who is too soft will be overrun by rebels. A second counterpoint came from the idea that peace was a luxury for the elite. In some Greek city-states, only the wealthy could afford to live in quiet neighborhoods. The poor lived in crowded alleys where fights broke out over food. Some historians note that the famous truce at the end of the Trojan War was negotiated by kings and queens, while the common soldiers kept fighting over spoils. This view suggests that peace was a shield for those with power, not a gift for all. Historical anecdotes bring these ideas to life. One story tells of a tea ceremony in the court of the Zhou dynasty. The emperor invited scholars to share tea in a quiet garden. As the steam rose, the host said, "When the tea is clear, the heart is clear." The scholars bowed, poured the tea with steady hands, and listened to each other's thoughts. The ceremony showed that a calm setting could teach the value of inner peace. The tea, warm and smooth, reminded participants that peace can be as simple as a shared cup. Another anecdote comes from a Greek city-state called Argos. After years of fighting with a neighboring polis, the council gathered in the agora, the open marketplace. Citizens argued, voices rose, and the mood was tense. Then an elder rose and said, "We have lost sons and grain. Let us vote for a truce." The council voted, the truce was written on a clay tablet, and both sides agreed to stop the fighting for a season. The truce allowed farmers to plant crops and families to mourn. The story shows that a collective decision, made in a public space, can bring peace even after long war. The ancient teachings also include vivid analogies that still speak to modern ears. Confucius once compared a ruler to a gardener. He said, "A gardener does not pull up the seedlings. He waters them and lets them grow. The gardener's gentle care lets the garden flourish without weeds. In the same way, a leader who tends to the people with care can keep the land free of conflict." The Buddha used the image of a still lake. He taught that a mind like a lake reflects the sky clearly, while a mind full of ripples cannot see the moon. A calm mind can see truth, and truth brings peace. These analogies help to see how early ideas fit daily life. When a child shares a snack with a sibling, the child practices the same generosity that Confucius praised. When a person sits quietly by a river and watches the water flow, that person follows the Buddha's advice to watch thoughts without grabbing them. When a storyteller sings of a hero who returns home to a quiet hearth, that story echoes Homer's belief that peace is a safe place after struggle. Later sections of the video will look at how these ancient thoughts link to moral duties. The idea that each person has a duty to keep peace inside themselves leads to a duty to help others stay calm. The moral duty to act kindly, to speak gently, and to listen well can be traced back to these early teachings. The next part will explore how modern philosophers build on these duties and turn them into rules for societies. To sum up, early thoughts on peace in ancient cultures show a blend of inner calm and outward action. Confucius taught that virtue in a ruler spreads calm. The Buddha taught that a quiet mind is the source of peace. Homer sang of a longing for a pause in war. Two simple analogies, sharing a meal and fixing a broken toy, show how these ideas fit everyday moments. Two counterpoints remind that some believed peace needed strict rules or belonged only to the powerful. Two historical anecdotes, the Chinese tea ceremony and the Greek council's truce, give life to the teachings. Quotes from the masters echo through the ages, reminding listeners that peace starts inside and can grow outward. The journey continues into the study of moral duties, where the ancient seeds of peace blossom into modern ideas of justice and care. People have always looked for a calm way to live together. The idea of peace is not just a feeling, it is a moral choice. It starts with the simple fact that hurting others feels wrong. It also starts with the simple fact that helping others feels right. When a child gives a favorite toy to a younger sibling, the child feels warm inside. The child does not think about politics or power. The child only feels that sharing makes the younger sibling smile and stops a cry. That small act shows a basic moral reason for peace. It shows that caring for another being can bring joy and can stop pain. The child's action is a tiny picture of why many people want peace. A second small picture comes from a neighbor who rushes to help after a storm. The wind has knocked down trees, and a roof has been ripped open. The neighbor carries a ladder, a hammer, and a calm voice. He does not think about winning a competition or about how much freedom he might lose if he stays inside. He thinks about the family inside the broken house, about the fear they feel, and about the need to stop that fear. By helping, the neighbor reduces pain and brings safety. This story shows that the desire to protect others is a strong moral pull toward peace. These two stories are easy to see, but they also point to deeper ideas that philosophers have talked about for centuries. The first big idea is that people care about others' well-being. This idea appears in the ancient Greek thought of eudaimonia, which means a good life. The Greek word can be explained as a life where each person can flourish and where others can flourish too. The moral rule that "do not harm" is found in many traditions. In the Christian Bible, a well-known line reads, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." That line tells people to treat others the way they would like to be treated. The line is short, but it carries a powerful moral reason to keep peace. If everyone follows that rule, there will be less hurt and more calm. Another ancient source is the Buddhist teaching of metta, which means loving kindness. The teaching says that a mind that wishes happiness for all beings will not cause war. The teaching adds, "May all beings be happy, may all beings be free from suffering." This simple wish shows that the desire to stop pain is at the heart of peace. When people feel this wish, they look for ways to keep calm, not to start fights. In the modern age, philosophers such as John Stuart Mill wrote about the due greatest happiness principle. Mill wrote, "Actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness." The quote is short, but it tells that the moral goal is to increase happiness and cut down pain. If peace brings happiness and war brings pain, then peace becomes a moral choice. The quote is from Mill's work Utilitarianism, a classic text that still shapes how people think about moral decisions. The moral reasons for peace also appear in the idea of rights. The idea says that each person has a right to live without fear of violence. The right to life and safety is a basic moral claim. When a society respects those rights, it builds peace. The claim is not about power or competition. It is about the simple fact that hurting a person violates that person's right to be safe. These moral ideas have been tested in real life. In the 12th century, a guild of metalworkers in a German town decided that members would not fight each other with swords. The guild made a rule that any dispute must be settled by a calm discussion in the guild hall. The rule was written on a wooden board and hung for all to see. The guild's leader said, "We work with fire and iron. Let us not let fire burn our hearts." The rule helped the guild avoid many fights that could have cost lives and ruined work. The story shows how a group can turn a moral idea, avoiding pain, into a real peace practice. The guild's rule also shows that a community can choose calm over competition, even when the tools they use are dangerous. A different culture shows a similar moral pull toward peace. In the early 1800s, a council of the Lakota people gathered on a high hill after a long period of fighting between neighboring bands. Instead of drawing weapons, the council sang a long song that told the story of the ancestors who lived together in harmony. The song was called the Peace Song. As the singers raised their voices, the tension in the air seemed to melt. The council members then talked about sharing hunting grounds and helping each other in hard times. The song helped them see each other as family, not as enemies. A Lakota elder later wrote, "When the drum beats, the heart beats with it, and the heart knows peace." The anecdote shows that music and shared stories can turn moral wishes into real peace. These two historical anecdotes give a sense of how moral ideas can become practice. They also show that peace does not need a big law or a powerful army. It can start with a rule in a guild or a song in a council. The moral core stays the same: caring for others and avoiding pain. The moral reasons for peace have also faced opposition. Some thinkers argue that competition is more important than calm. The argument says that when people compete, they push themselves to be better. The argument says that if everyone is too calm, no one will try to improve. The idea can be heard in the words of the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus, who wrote, "War is the father of all things." The quote suggests that conflict can create change. In modern business, some people say that a little rivalry keeps markets alive. They claim that if companies never competed, there would be no new products, no lower prices, and no progress. This view puts competition above peace, saying that a little tension is useful. A second opposing view says that peace can limit freedom. The claim is that if a society forces everyone to be calm, it may also force everyone to think the same way. The claim says that a strict peace can become a rule that stops people from speaking out, from protesting, from demanding change. The idea appears in the writings of the French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who warned that the desire for order can become a chain. The quote means that a strong wish for order can turn into a restriction on personal liberty. Some modern critics say that too much emphasis on peace can hide oppression. They argue that if a government says peace is most important, it might silence dissent and keep unfair power in place. These two opposing ideas do not erase the moral reasons for peace, but they do show that the path to peace is not always clear. The moral pull to avoid pain meets the fear that peace could become a trap. The balance between caring for others and protecting freedom is a delicate one. To see how the moral reasons for peace work today, look at a modern example from a school. In a middle school in a quiet town, a group of students started a kindness circle. Every week, the students sit in a circle and share one thing they did to help someone else. One student said, "I helped a new kid carry his books." Another said, "I shared my snack when my friend forgot lunch." The circle ends with a promise to keep the school calm and safe. The teacher says the circle reduces bullying and makes the school feel like a safe place. The example shows that a simple moral idea, caring for others, can be turned into a routine that builds peace. A second modern example comes from a neighborhood in a large city that faced frequent fights over parking spaces. The residents formed a parking pact. The pact says that each car must stay in its spot for at least 2 hours before moving, and that anyone who needs a spot can ask politely. The pact also includes a rule that if a car blocks another, the driver must apologize and move the car quickly. The pact was signed after a meeting where a resident told a story about a child who cried because a car blocked his mother's car and the mother could not get to the hospital. The pact reduced arguments and made the street calmer. The story shows how a moral desire to avoid pain can lead to a practical agreement that keeps peace. Both examples show that moral reasons for peace can be turned into everyday actions. They also show that peace can be built without big laws, just by caring for each other. The moral foundation of peace also appears in the idea of social contract. The idea says that people agree to follow rules that keep everyone safe. The French philosopher Rousseau wrote, "We are born free, yet we are everywhere in chains." He meant that people give up some freedom to live safely together. The moral side of the contract is that people do it because they want to avoid the pain of chaos. The contract is not just a legal document, it is a moral promise to protect each other. Modern philosophers still talk about this promise. The contemporary thinker Martha Nussbaum writes about capabilities, which are the things each person needs to live a good life, such as health, education, and safety. She says that societies have a moral duty to protect those capabilities. If peace is missing, those capabilities are at risk. Her words remind listeners that peace is not a luxury. It is a moral need for a good life. In everyday life, the moral pull toward peace can be seen in small choices. A driver who lets another car merge does so to avoid a crash. A parent who talks calmly to an angry teenager does so to avoid a fight. These choices are guided by the same moral idea that hurting another feels wrong and helping feels right. The idea is simple. People want to live without pain, and they want to help others live without pain. When people think about peace, they also think about how to solve conflicts. In the earlier section on conflict resolution, it was explained that listening, finding common ground, and using fair rules can end a fight. The moral reasons for peace give the why behind those tools. If people care about others and want to avoid pain, they will be willing to listen and find a middle path. The moral pull makes the tools of conflict resolution work. A useful analogy can help picture the moral pull toward peace. Imagine a garden. Each plant wants sunlight and water. If one plant grows too tall and shades the others, the garden suffers. The gardener trims the tall plant to let light reach all. The gardener's action is like the moral reason to keep peace. It protects the whole garden from harm. If the gardener never trimmed, the garden would become a dark, painful place for many plants. The garden shows how caring for the whole group leads to actions that keep peace. Another analogy uses a music band. In a band, each player must listen to the others. If the drummer plays too loudly, the singers cannot be heard. The band must find a balance of volume so that every instrument can be heard. The balance is like peace. It is not about making every sound the same, but about making sure no one's sound hurts another's chance to be heard. The band's practice of listening and adjusting is a simple picture of how moral care for others creates a calm space. The moral reasons for peace also appear in laws that protect children. Many countries have laws that make it illegal to hurt a child. The laws are based on the belief that children are vulnerable and that causing them pain is wrong. The laws show that societies turn moral ideas into rules that keep peace for the most vulnerable. In the world of business, a company may adopt a code of conduct that says employees must treat each other with respect. The code often includes a line like, "We do not tolerate harassment." The line is a moral statement that hurting a co-worker is wrong. The code helps keep the workplace calm. The example shows that moral ideas can shape large organizations. Even in international affairs, the moral pull toward peace shows up. The United Nations Charter begins with a line that justice is often seen as a set of rules that tell people what is right and what is wrong. When those rules are fair, they can help a community stay calm. The idea that fairness can bring peace has been around for a very long time. In ancient cities, leaders would gather around a fire and talk about what was fair. They asked how to treat each person with respect. Those early talks became the seed of what later thinkers called justice. The first big name that comes to mind is Plato. He lived in Athens about 2,000 years ago. He wrote a story about a city that works well when each part does its job. He called that harmony justice. He said that when people follow the right rules, the city can be at peace. Plato's student, Aristotle, added a different view. He said justice means giving each person what they deserve. He wrote that if a farmer gets a fair share of the harvest, the farmer will be happy and will not argue with the neighbor. Aristotle also said that if the rules are clear, people can trust each other. Trust makes it easier for them to live together without fighting. Later, during the Middle Ages, a monk named Augustine thought about justice and peace. He believed that true peace comes from following a higher moral law. He wrote that a ruler who is just will protect his people and keep the land calm. Augustine's ideas spread to another thinker, Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas wrote, Justice is the firm and continuous desire to render to each his due. He meant that a person who wants to be just will always try to give others what they are owed. Aquinas also said that a just ruler must protect the weak. When the weak feel safe, they are less likely to cause trouble. In the 17th century, John Locke wrote about natural rights. He said that every person is born with the right to life, liberty, and property. He wrote, "All men are created equal and have certain inalienable rights." Locke argued that a government that respects those rights can keep the peace. If a government takes away a person's property or freedom, people will become angry and may fight. Locke's ideas helped shape many modern laws about fairness. Another important voice is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He believed that people are naturally good, but that bad rules can corrupt them. He said that a fair social contract, where everyone agrees to follow the same rules, can bring peace. Rousseau wrote, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." He meant that when the rules are unfair, people feel trapped and may rebel. In the 20th century, John Rawls offered a new way to think about justice. He imagined a veil of ignorance, where people design rules without knowing who they will be. Rawls said that if people choose rules this way, they will pick the most fair ones. He called this justice as fairness. Rawls argued that fair rules protect the most vulnerable and keep society calm. He wrote, "Justice is the first virtue of social institutions." Rawls believed that if institutions are just, they will help keep the peace. These thinkers all share a common idea. Fairness builds trust. Trust reduces the chance of conflict. When people feel that the rules are fair, they are more willing to follow them. That willingness creates a steady rhythm in daily life, much like a heartbeat that keeps the body alive. One everyday example shows how a simple rule can bring calm. In many schools, there is a rule that everyone must share the crayons during art time. The rule says that each student gets the same amount of time with each color. When the rule is clear, students know what to expect. They do not argue over who gets the red crayon first. The teacher does not have to stop the class to settle fights. The class stays peaceful, and the children can focus on drawing. The rule works because it is fair and easy to understand. A second example comes from traffic lights. A traffic light tells drivers when to stop and when to go. The red light means stop. The green light means go. When every driver follows the light, cars move smoothly and accidents are few. If a driver ignores the red light, a crash can happen. The light is a simple rule that protects everyone. It does not ask drivers to think about each other's intentions. It just gives a clear signal. Because the rule is fair and applied to all drivers, the road stays safer and calmer. These two examples show how fairness in small rules can keep larger peace. They also illustrate a key argument, that justice creates predictability. Predictability means that people can plan their actions without fear of sudden surprise. When people can plan, they feel secure. Security is a cornerstone of peace. However, not everyone agrees that strict rules always help peace. One counter-argument says that harsh laws can create resentment. Imagine a school where the sharing rule is enforced with severe punishment for any mistake. A child who forgets to give the green crayon back might be sent to the principal's office. The child may feel angry and think the rule is unfair. That anger can turn into a desire to break other rules. The school may end up with more trouble, not less. Critics say that when rules are too strict, they can push people away from the system instead of bringing them into it. A second counter-argument focuses on speed. Justice often works through courts, committees, or investigations. Those processes can take months or years. In a conflict, people may need quick answers. If a community waits a long time for a court decision, the anger may grow. Some argue that peace needs fast action, while justice needs careful thought. They worry that slow justice can let violence continue unchecked. The criticism is that waiting for a fair decision may sometimes cost the peace it hopes to protect. History offers stories that show both the power and the limits of justice. One famous story is the Magna Carta, signed in 1215 in England. At that time, King John ruled with absolute power. The barons, who were powerful landowners, were angry because the king taxed them heavily and took their lands. They forced the king to sign a document that limited his power. The Magna Carta listed rights that the king could not ignore, such as the right to a fair trial. By agreeing to those limits, the king gave the barons a sense of fairness. The agreement reduced the fighting that had broken out between the king's forces and the rebels. Over time, the Magna Carta became a symbol of the idea that even a ruler must follow the law. It showed that when a powerful person accepts fair rules, the land can become calmer. A second historical anecdote comes from South Africa after the end of apartheid. In the early 1990s, the country moved from a system of racial oppression to a new democracy. To help the nation heal, a group called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, was created. The TRC invited people who had committed violent acts to tell the truth about what they did. In return, they could receive reduced punishment if they were honest. The commission also gave a platform for victims to speak. The aim was not only to punish, but to uncover the truth and allow the country to move forward. Many South Africans felt that the process was fair because it gave voice to both sides. The TRC helped reduce the urge for revenge and allowed the nation to build a more peaceful future. The South African story shows how a form of justice that focuses on truth and forgiveness can help a whole society find calm. Modern societies often blend the ideas of the past with new ways of thinking. One modern approach is called restorative justice. Restorative justice looks at the harm caused by a wrongdoing and tries to repair it. Instead of only punishing the offender, it brings together the offender, the victim, and sometimes community members. They talk about what happened, how it hurt, and what can be done to make things right. This method tries to keep the community whole. It respects the idea that fairness is not just about punishment, but about healing. Restorative circles in schools, for example, let students who broke a rule sit with the teacher and the student they hurt. Together they decide how the hurt student can make amends. The school stays peaceful because the hurt is addressed and the rule is still respected. Another modern idea is procedural justice. Procedural justice means that the way a decision is made is fair, not just the outcome. If a police officer explains why a stop was made, lets the driver speak, and listens respectfully, the driver is more likely to accept the decision, even if it is a ticket. Studies show that people who feel the process is fair are more likely to follow the law later. This shows that fairness in the method can boost peace. An analogy can help picture the link between justice and peace. Think of a garden. The garden needs water, sunlight, and soil that is not too hard. Justice is like the water that reaches every plant equally. If some plants get too much water and others get none, the garden will become uneven and some plants may die. When water is shared fairly, the garden grows healthy and beautiful. The calm garden is like a peaceful society where everyone feels cared for. Another analogy is a set of scales. One side holds the needs of the many, the other holds the rights of the few. If the scales are balanced, the weight is even and the scale does not tip. A balanced scale means the rules treat everyone fairly. When the scale tips, people feel that the system is biased. That feeling can lead to anger and conflict. Keeping the scales balanced is a way to keep the peace. Real-world applications of justice for peace can be seen in community policing. In many cities, police officers now meet with neighborhood groups regularly. They listen to concerns about safety, share information about crimes, and work together on solutions. This partnership builds trust. When residents trust the police, they are more likely to report crimes and cooperate. The community feels safer, and crime rates can drop. The partnership works because both sides see the process as fair. Another application is the use of fair trade labels on products. Fair trade rules require that farmers receive a fair price for their crops. When buyers follow these rules, farmers can support their families and invest in their farms. The farmers feel respected and are less likely to turn to illegal activities. Consumers who know the rules are fair feel good about their purchases. The whole chain stays calm because each link respects the others. Modern thinkers also talk about peaceful justice. This phrase means that justice should aim not only at punishment, but also at creating conditions where peace can grow. Amartya Sen, an economist, says that development should expand the freedoms that people enjoy. He argues that when people have the freedom to speak, to move, and to own property, they are less likely to fight. This view ties economic fairness to peace. It shows that justice is not only about courts, but also about giving people the chance to live well. Some critics point out that justice can sometimes be used as a tool for power. They say that those in charge may write rules that look fair. The story of inner peace begins long before the word mindfulness entered modern classrooms. In ancient Greece, a teacher named Epictetus taught that a calm mind is the first step toward a good life. He said that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. In the same way, a Buddhist monk in the 12th century would rise before sunrise, sweep the floor of his small stone cell, and sit in quiet breathing for an hour. He believed that a still mind could keep the world outside from shaking his heart. The monk's routine shows how daily habit can shape inner calm. The habit of sweeping the floor is an act of paying attention to each movement, a simple way to train the mind to stay present. Later, during the medieval period, a Christian mystic named Julian of Norwich wrote, "All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well." Her words point to a belief that inner hope can hold the world together. The idea that personal calm can ripple outward appears again in the writings of the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, who wrote, "He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior." These early voices share a common theme. The mind, the heart, and daily practice are linked to the larger peace of society. In modern times, a psychologist named John Kabat-Zinn created a program called mindfulness-based stress reduction. He taught that paying attention on purpose, without judging, can lower anxiety and improve health. He often told his students, "You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." That simple image shows how inner skill can help a person stay steady when life feels stormy. The program spread to schools, hospitals, and workplaces, showing that the ancient idea of inner calm still has a place today. The argument for inner peace as a foundation for larger peace rests on 3 points. First, a calm mind reduces the chance of angry words and violent actions. When a person feels steady, they are less likely to lash out at others. Second, inner calm creates a sense of empathy. When one can sit with their own feelings, they can better understand the feelings of another. Third, the habit of quiet practice can become a public example. A person who breathes slowly before a test, for instance, can inspire classmates to try the same, creating a calmer classroom. One practical example is the simple act of breathing slowly before a test. A student can close the eyes, count to 4 while inhaling, hold for a moment, then count to 4 while exhaling. This short routine can lower the racing heart and clear the mind. In a high school in Oregon, a teacher named Maya introduced this breathing exercise before every math quiz. She reported that the class average scores rose and that students seemed less nervous. The teacher's story shows how a tiny inner habit can improve performance and create a calmer environment for all. A second practice is writing a gratitude list. At the end of each day, a person can write down 3 things that felt good or that they appreciated. This habit trains the mind to notice the positive rather than the negative. In a community center in Detroit, a group of adults gathered each evening to share their gratitude notes. Over weeks, they reported feeling more connected and less angry at each other. The simple act of noting thanks turned a noisy room into a place of quiet sharing. These 2 practices illustrate how inner work can be easy to start and can have visible effect. They also link back to the moral foundations discussed earlier: the value of kindness, the respect for others, and the desire for fairness. When a person learns to calm their own mind, they are more able to act in line with those values. The calm heart can become a small engine that drives larger social peace. Not everyone agrees that inner work is the right path. One objection claims that focusing on personal calm is selfish. Critics say that time spent on meditation could be used to help the poor or to protest injustice. They argue that inner peace is a private luxury, not a public duty. A second objection says that calm cannot change real problems like war, poverty, or racism. It suggests that external forces need political action, not quiet breathing. These objections have merit and deserve a clear response. The claim of selfishness can be answered by looking at the monk's daily routine. The monk does not meditate for personal gain alone. He does it to be a better neighbor, to offer help, and to keep the monastery peaceful. His calm makes him a reliable helper in the community. In the same way, a modern teacher who uses mindfulness does not keep the practice hidden. She shares the breathing exercise with the whole class, giving each child a tool to handle stress. The teacher's calm becomes a resource for the whole group, not a private indulgence. The claim that calm cannot affect external problems can be met with the story of the civil rights sit-ins in the 1960s. Many leaders practiced meditation to keep their nerves steady while facing police aggression. Their inner steadiness helped them stay non-violent, which in turn drew public sympathy and changed laws. The inner calm did not replace protest, it strengthened it. The same principle works today when activists use breathwork to stay focused during long marches. Their calm presence can keep the movement peaceful, allowing the message to be heard more clearly. Historical anecdotes reinforce the power of inner practice. The 12th century monk mentioned earlier followed a strict schedule. Wake at 4 a.m., sweep, chant, eat a simple meal, study scriptures, and end the day with a long sitting meditation. He kept a small journal where he wrote, "When the wind rattles the window, I keep my mind still." His calm allowed him to guide other monks, to resolve disputes, and to keep the monastery safe during a time of local conflict. The monk's inner peace became a shield for his community. In a modern setting, a teacher named Carlos in a public school in Barcelona introduced a 5-minute mindfulness pause at the start of each lesson. He asked students to notice the breath, to feel their feet on the floor, and to let thoughts pass like clouds. At first, some students laughed, but after a month, the classroom showed fewer interruptions and more respectful listening. Carlos wrote, "The calm I bring into the room spreads like warm light, and the students respond with calm of their own." His story shows how a simple practice can change the atmosphere of an entire school. Analogies help to picture how inner calm spreads outward. Imagine a pond on a still morning. A single stone dropped creates ripples that travel far across the water. The stone is the inner practice. The ripples are the calm actions that reach others. Another analogy is a lamp in a dark room. When the lamp is lit, the light touches everything around it. The lamp does not move, but the room becomes brighter. The lamp is the steady mind, and the bright room is the community that feels safer. Real-world applications of inner peace extend beyond schools and monasteries. In a busy airport, a team of staff trained in brief breathing techniques reported lower stress and fewer errors during peak travel times. In a corporate office, a manager who wrote a gratitude list each evening noticed that team meetings became more collaborative and turnover dropped. These examples show that the practice can be adapted to many settings, from the quiet monastery to the noisy marketplace. Modern interpretations of inner peace often blend ancient wisdom with scientific research. Neuroscientists have shown that regular meditation can change brain patterns, increasing activity in areas linked to compassion and decreasing activity in areas linked to fear. Psychologists call this emotional regulation, a skill that helps people stay calm even when the world feels chaotic. The science does not replace the old stories, but it gives a new language to explain why the practices work. The link between inner calm and social peace also ties back to the moral foundations of fairness, care, and loyalty. When a person can keep their mind steady, they are more likely to act fairly, to care for others, and to stay loyal to the common good. The inner practice becomes a bridge from personal virtue to public virtue. This bridge can support larger movements for peace, from neighborhood mediation programs to international negotiations. Looking forward, the idea is that many small acts of inner calm can add up to a larger wave of peace. If each student breathes before a test, each teacher shares gratitude, each worker takes a moment to notice the breath, the whole society can shift toward less anger and more cooperation. The calm heart is not a magic cure, but it is a seed that can grow into a forest of peace. To sum up the key points, the story began with early thinkers like Epictetus, Lao Tzu, and Julian of Norwich, who taught that the mind and heart matter for the world. The monk's daily routine showed how simple habits can protect a community. Modern research confirms that breathing slowly and writing gratitude can lower stress and improve relationships. Objections that inner work is selfish or ineffective are answered by examples of monks helping neighbors and activists staying non-violent. Historical anecdotes of a 12th century monk and a modern teacher illustrate how inner calm spreads. Analogies of a pond and a lamp make the idea easy to see. Real-world cases in airports, offices, and schools prove that the practice works in many places. Modern science adds a fresh explanation, while the moral foundations keep the practice rooted in care for others. The final picture is one where inner peace fuels social peace, turning quiet moments into a louder call for harmony. The next part of the journey will move from the personal to the public. It will explore how groups can build shared calm, how communities can design spaces for quiet, and how policies can support practices that nurture the mind. The calm that starts in a single breath can become the calm that guides a city, a nation, and perhaps the whole world. The story continues, but the first step always begins inside. Conflict is not a single thing. It is a pattern that shows up in many places. It can start with a need for food, a need for space, or a need for respect. When people feel that something they need is missing, they may turn to anger. That anger can turn into a fight. The study of peace looks at why those fights begin. It also looks at how they can end. One of the first places that philosophers thought about conflict was ancient Greece. Thucydides wrote about the war between Athens and Sparta. He said that fear, honor, and interest drove the two city-states toward war. He wrote, "Rule the cause of the war was the growth of Athenian power and the fear that this caused in Sparta." In this short line, he points to two ideas. First, a feeling that one side is getting stronger. Second, a feeling that the other side might lose something important. Those ideas are still used today to explain why groups clash. Another early thinker was Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes wrote that life in a state without rules is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. He believed that people fight because they all want what they think they need. When there is no power to keep order, each person tries to get what they want. Hobbes thought that a strong ruler could stop the fighting. This view puts the blame on the lack of a ruler, not on the people themselves. Later, Jean-Jacques Rousseau argued that people are naturally good. He said that it is society that makes them fight. He wrote, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." For Rousseau, the chains are the rules and expectations that turn people against each other. The idea that society can create conflict is a different angle from Hobbes. It says that the problem is not the lack of power, but the way power is used. In the 20th century, Johann Galtung introduced the idea of structural violence. He said that violence can be hidden in the way a society is built. When a group cannot get a good job, cannot get clean water, or cannot vote, that is a kind of violence. It is not a sword or a gun, but it still hurts. Galtung's view expands the idea of conflict beyond the obvious fights. It adds the idea that unfair systems can break peace. All of these thinkers give a picture of why conflict starts. Some point to fear and power. Some point to unfair rules. Some point to missing resources. The next part shows how these ideas play out in everyday life. Imagine a boy named Alex. He and his sister Maya share a video game console. The game has a level that can be finished only once each day. Alex wants to play first. Maya says she has been waiting all night. Both feel that the game is something they need to feel good. Their need turns into a fight. They raise their voices. The room feels tense. The conflict here is about a small thing, but the feeling behind it is big. It is about being heard, about being respected, about having a turn. The fight shows how scarcity, even of time on a console, can spark a clash. Now picture two neighbors, Sam and Lena. Sam wants to build a taller fence to keep his garden private. Lena says the fence blocks her view of the street. The fence is a piece of wood, but it stands for privacy for Sam and openness for Lena. They argue. They call each other selfish. The argument grows louder. The fence becomes a symbol of control. The disagreement shows how a simple boundary can become a source of tension when people see it as a threat to their values. Both of these stories have a common thread. They start with a need that feels limited. The need can be a turn on a game or a view from a house. When the need feels blocked, the feeling of loss can become anger. That anger can turn into words, then into shouting, then into a fight. The pattern matches the ideas of Hobbes and Rousseau. Hobbes would say the two people are trying to get what they think they need. Rousseau would say the rules of sharing the game or the fence are making them feel trapped. The conflict can also be seen in larger groups. In the year 401 BCE, the city of Athens sent troops to help a small city called Potidaea. Sparta saw this as a sign that Athens was getting too strong. Sparta felt scared. Athens felt proud. The fear of losing power made both sides think that war was the only way to protect their interests. Thucydides writes, "The war was caused by the growth of Athenian power and the fear this caused in Sparta." The war lasted for 27 years and broke many lives. The cause was not a single battle, but a feeling of scarcity of power and a fear of losing honor. A different story happened in the United States in the late 1800s. In 1886, workers in Chicago went on strike to demand a shorter workday. The strike grew into a massive protest. The city leaders called the police to break up the crowd. The police used clubs and guns. The clash turned deadly. The event is known as the Haymarket Affair. A bomb was thrown and several people died. The strike began because workers felt they did not have enough time to rest and spend with families. The leaders felt that the workers were breaking the order of the city. The violence showed how a lack of fair wages and a feeling of being unheard can explode into a fight. Both the Peloponnesian War and the Haymarket Affair show how a feeling of scarcity can lead to violence. In the first case, the scarcity was power and honor. In the second case, the scarcity was time and fair pay. Both cases also show how misunderstanding can make the problem worse. Athens thought Sparta was trying to stop them from being free. Sparta thought Athens was trying to dominate them. In Chicago, the city leaders thought the workers wanted to destroy order. The workers thought the leaders ignored their need for a decent life. The misunderstanding of each side's motives added fuel to the fire. Modern thinkers still use these ideas. Some scholars say that conflict can be a chance to grow. They argue that when people argue, they learn about each other's limits. They say that a healthy disagreement can lead to new ideas. This view is called the conflict as growth perspective. It is a counterview to the idea that conflict is always bad. It says that not all fights are destructive. Some can be a step toward better solutions. Another counterview says that all conflict comes from bad leadership. This view puts the blame on those who guide groups. If a leader is unfair, if a leader does not listen, if a leader spreads false ideas, then the group will fight. The claim is that good leaders can keep peace by being fair and clear. This idea appears in many modern books on management. It says that peace is a product of wise leadership. Both counterviews have strengths and weaknesses. The growth view can ignore the pain that real fights cause. Not every fight leads to learning. Some fights leave scars that never heal. The leadership view can overlook the fact that even good leaders cannot control every feeling of scarcity. People may still feel fear or anger even when a leader tries to be fair. The two ideas together remind the viewer that peace is a balance of many factors. The study of peace also looks at how conflict can be resolved. One way is through justice. Justice means that each side gets what they deserve. It can be a fair share of resources, a fair punishment for wrongdoing, or a fair chance to be heard. When justice is seen as fair, the feeling of scarcity can shrink. In the sibling example, a parent might set a timer for the video game. The timer gives each child an equal chance. The timer is a simple form of justice. It tells the children that the rule applies to both. The feeling that the rule is fair can calm the anger. Forgiveness is another tool. Forgiveness means letting go of the hurt and moving on. It does not mean forgetting what happened. It means choosing not to hold the wrong as a weapon. In the neighbor story, Lena might write a note apologizing for yelling. Sam might lower the fence a little. Both may decide to see the fence as a shared space, not a barrier. By forgiving, they stop the fight from growing into a long-term feud. Both justice and forgiveness are linked to the ideas of the ancient philosophers. In the Bible, a well-known quote says, "The blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." This quote, while religious, reflects the idea that those who work to end conflict are valued. In the writings of Confucius, there is a line that reads, "When you see a man's virtue, think of your own shortcomings." This encourages self-reflection rather than blame. Both quotes point to the idea that looking inside can help calm outward conflict. Real-world applications of these ideas appear in schools. Many schools now teach conflict resolution skills. They use role play where two students act out a disagreement. The teacher guides them to find a fair solution. This practice is a mix of justice, finding a fair outcome, and forgiveness, letting go of the anger. The practice shows that the ancient ideas of fairness and letting go still work today. In the workplace, many companies use mediation. A mediator is a neutral person who helps two sides talk. The mediator does not take sides. He or she helps each person say what they need. The mediator helps find a solution that both can accept. This method reflects the ideas of Galtung about hidden violence. By giving a voice to those who feel unheard, the company reduces the hidden harm that can turn into a bigger fight. The modern world also sees conflict in the digital realm. Online comments can turn into heated arguments. A person may feel that their opinion is being ignored. The scarcity is of attention. The misunderstanding can be a lack of tone. When a comment is read as an insult, the fight can start. The same tools of justice and forgiveness can help. A platform can set clear rules, justice. A user can apologize for a harsh comment, forgiveness. The principles stay the same even when the setting changes. Another modern example is climate activism. Some people protest because they feel that resources like clean air and water are being taken away. The scarcity is of a healthy planet. The misunderstanding can be that some leaders think the protests are only about money, not about survival. The conflict can become violent if the police use force. The ideas of justice, fair distribution of resources, and forgiveness, building bridges between activists and authorities, become central to solving the problem. Throughout history, the pattern repeats. A feeling of scarcity leads to fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to words that can hurt. Hurt leads to more anger. The cycle can be broken by fairness, by listening, by clear rules, and by letting go of the hurt. One more story helps to illustrate the power of a simple analogy. Think of a garden. In a garden, each plant needs water, sunlight, and space. If one plant takes all the water, the others wilt. The gardener must share the water fairly. If the gardener does not, the garden will become a mess. The garden is like a community. Each person is a plant. The water is the resources. The gardener is the leader or the set of rules. When the gardener shares fairly, the garden thrives. When the gardener hoards, the garden suffers. This picture shows how scarcity and unfair sharing can break peace. Another analogy uses a music band. In a band, each musician has a role. If the drummer tries to play the melody, the music becomes noisy. If the guitarist does not listen to the singer, the song loses harmony. The band needs each player to respect the others. The band's conductor, if there is one, helps keep the tempo. If the conductor is bad, the band sounds chaotic. The band is a small society. The instruments are the needs of each person. The conductor is the leadership. The music is the peace that can exist when everyone plays in tune. Both analogies bring the abstract ideas of philosophers into everyday images. They help a listener see that conflict is not a mysterious force. It is a result of simple things that can be fixed. Returning to the ancient stories, another anecdote from the Peloponnesian War shows how a misunderstanding can spark a war. Athens sent help to a city that was allied with Sparta. Sparta thought this was a betrayal. Athens thought it was helping a friend. The misreading of each other's actions made both sides angry. The war that followed lasted for decades. The lesson is that clear communication can stop a fight before it starts. A later anecdote from the labor strike in Chicago shows how leadership can shape the outcome. The city mayor decided to send troops to break the strike. The workers felt that the mayor did not care about their lives. The troops. The story begins with a small child named Lena. Lena plays in the living room while her mother watches a book. A bright blue vase sits on a low table. Lena reaches for a toy car, and the car rolls across the rug. The car bumps the vase. The vase tips. The vase falls. The vase shatters on the floor. A sharp sound fills the room. Lena freezes. She looks at the broken pieces. She feels a tight knot in her chest. She knows she has caused loss. She looks at her mother's face. The mother's eyes are wide, then soften. The mother says, "It is okay, Lena. You can help clean up. You can help clean up." Lena nods. She picks up a cloth. She wipes the floor. She says, "I am sorry." The mother smiles. She says, "Thank you for saying sorry. Let us fix this together." The two of them gather the shards. They put the pieces in a box. Later they find a repair kit. The vase is glued back together. The crack remains, but the vase stands again. The scene shows that a simple apology can start a repair. The child learns that saying sorry opens a door to fixing what was broken. A different scene unfolds in a river town called Riverbend. A great flood sweeps through the town after weeks of rain. The water rises fast. It reaches the homes, the market, the school. The flood leaves mud and debris. The townspeople stand on high ground, looking at the damage. Some houses are gone. The market stalls are broken. The school roof is torn. The people feel loss and anger. A council meeting is called. The town elders speak. One elder says, "We must rebuild together." Another elder says, "We must forgive each other for the blame we carry." The townspeople listen. They share stories of loss. They share stories of loss. They share fears. Then they begin to clear the mud. They lift fallen beams. They share tools. They help each other. A young man who lost his shop offers his hammer to a neighbor whose roof is broken. A woman who lost a child offers a blanket to a grieving family. The work continues day after day. Slowly the town rises from the water. The market reopens. The school doors open again. The town finds a new calm. The flood taught them that letting go of grudges lets them work side by side. The town's peace is repaired through shared effort. These two simple stories illustrate a larger idea. Forgiveness is a step that can turn hurt into healing. When a child says sorry, the adult can choose to accept the apology. When a community chooses to help each other after a disaster, they choose to let go of blame. Both choices open a path to calm. Philosophers have spoken about forgiveness for centuries. One early thinker, Aristotle, wrote about the importance of virtue. He said that a good person seeks balance. He did not write a long treatise on forgiveness, but his idea of finding a middle way can be linked to forgiving. Later, Christian thinkers like Augustine wrote about mercy. Augustine said that mercy is a gift that frees the giver as well as the receiver. In the Christian Bible, a verse says, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving each other, as God in Christ forgave you." This line shows that forgiveness is a command to bring peace. In the modern era, Mahatma Gandhi made forgiveness a core part of his non-violent movement. He said, "The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong." Gandhi's words point to the power that comes from letting go. Another modern voice, Martin Luther King Jr., said, "Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a permanent attitude." King's view links forgiveness to a lasting way of being, not just a single moment. These quotes help to frame the idea that forgiveness can be a tool for peace. The child's apology and the town's rebuilding are small mirrors of the larger world. When a nation or a tribe chooses to forgive, the same pattern can happen. There are, however, ideas that challenge the view that forgiveness always leads to peace. One opposing view says that forgiving can let bad behavior continue. The argument goes like this: if a person harms another and the harmed person forgives quickly, the wrongdoer may feel no real consequence. The wrongdoer might think that the world will let them act without cost. This view warns that forgiveness can become a shield for injustice. It says that justice needs punishment, not just forgiveness. The view holds that without a clear response, the cycle of harm may repeat. A second opposing idea says that some harms cannot be repaired at all. The argument says that certain actions, such as genocide or severe abuse, leave wounds that cannot be fully healed. In those cases, forgiveness may feel like denying the depth of loss. The idea claims that asking victims to forgive can be an added burden. It says that some damage is too great for any repair, and that peace must be built in other ways, such as through truth-telling and restitution. Both opposing ideas raise important points. They remind that forgiveness is not a simple switch. It must be handled with care. The child's story does not ignore the fact that the vase was valuable. The mother's response included help to fix the vase, not just a quick pardon. The town's story includes hard work, not just a simple let it go. In both cases, the forgiveness is paired with action that restores what was broken. History offers real examples that show how forgiveness can shape peace. After the end of World War I, Germany faced the task of rebuilding a nation that had caused great harm. In the city of Frankfurt, former soldiers met with former victims in a series of meetings called Versöhnungstreffen, or reconciliation meetings. In these meetings, a former soldier said, "I cannot change the past, but I can listen to your story." A survivor replied, "Your listening helps me live without hate." The meetings were not about erasing guilt. They were about creating a space where both sides could speak. Over time, many participants reported a sense of calm that grew from hearing each other. The process helped the city move toward a shared future. The German example shows how a society can choose forgiveness while still demanding accountability. The trials, the reparations, and the public apologies all worked together. Forgiveness was part of a larger plan that also included justice. On another continent, a tribal community in Kenya practices a peace ceremony called Eriabu. The ceremony occurs after a serious conflict between two families. The elders gather the families under a large acacia tree. The elders speak, "Well, the river flows onward. It does not hold the stone that blocks it." The families each bring a small stone. Together they place the stones in the river. The water carries them downstream. The families then share a meal. The ceremony ends with a song that says, "We walk together, not apart." The ritual shows that forgiveness can be expressed through a shared act. The act of placing the stones in the river symbolizes letting go of the heavy weight of anger. The community's peace is restored through a simple, repeated practice. These two historical anecdotes echo the earlier stories. The child's apology, the town's rebuilding, the German reconciliation, and the Kenyan ceremony all involve a moment of letting go, followed by concrete steps that rebuild trust. The pattern is clear. Forgiveness opens a door, but the door must be walked through with honest work. Connecting this idea to inner peace, one can see that letting go of a grudge reduces inner turmoil. When a person holds a grudge, the mind stays busy with thoughts of hurt. Those thoughts create stress. When the person forgives, the mind can rest. The rest brings calm. The calm allows the person to think clearly and act kindly. This inner calm also supports the outer work of justice. When a community feels inner peace, it can better decide what is fair. The community can then balance forgiveness with accountability. The balance is what justice seeks, to give each person what they deserve while also allowing space for healing. Justice, in this sense, is not only about punishment. It also includes repair. In the child's story, the mother does not punish Lena. She asks Lena to help clean up. The act of cleaning is a repair. In the town's story, the people do not blame each other for the flood. They work together to rebuild. In the German example, the courts held people accountable, while the reconciliation meetings offered a chance for forgiveness. In the Kenyan ceremony, the families do not seek revenge. They instead perform a ritual that repairs the relationship. All four examples show that justice can be paired with forgiveness to create lasting peace. Now consider the argument that forgiveness may let bad behavior continue. The argument warns that if a wrongdoer faces no consequence, they may repeat the act. The German example shows a response to this concern. The courts punished those who were responsible for war crimes. The reconciliation meetings did not replace the courts. They added a human element. The combination of punishment and forgiveness helped prevent a repeat of the worst crimes while also allowing people to heal. The Kenyan ceremony also includes a form of accountability. The families admit their part in the conflict before they place the stones. The admission is a step that holds each side responsible. The ceremony does not ignore the harm. It acknowledges it. By doing so, it reduces the chance that the same harm will happen again. The second opposing view says that some harms cannot be repaired. The flood story shows that even severe loss can be rebuilt, but it also shows that some things are lost forever. The school may have lost books. The market may have lost unique items. The community accepts that some loss cannot be fully restored. Yet the community still works toward a new normal. The German example also shows that some losses, such as lives lost, cannot be returned. The process of reconciliation does not pretend to bring those lives back. It instead honors them and works to prevent future loss. The Kenyan ceremony likewise respects that some hurt will stay in memory, but it offers a way to move forward together. These examples illustrate that forgiveness does not erase the past. It does not pretend that the harm never happened. Instead, forgiveness creates a space where the past can be spoken about, where responsibility can be taken, and where the future can be built. The act of letting go is not a denial. It is a choice to stop the cycle of retaliation. A practical way to practice forgiveness starts with a simple step: naming the hurt. When a person says, "I feel angry because you broke my vase," the feeling is named. The next step is to ask, "Do I want to hold this anger?" The answer can lead to a choice. If the person chooses to let go, the next step is to speak, "I forgive you." The speaker can then add, "I would like us to work together to fix what?" The story of peace often begins with a look at how money, work, and sharing shape calm in a society. In the early chapters on justice and conflict, the idea that fairness matters was already clear. Now the focus turns to the way resources can either lift tension or add strain. One of the first thinkers to link economics with peace was Immanuel Kant. He wrote that a world of trade and mutual benefit would reduce the chance of war. Kant's perpetual peaceful idea was simple. If countries need each other for goods, they will think twice before fighting. He said, "Commerce and hospitality are the most powerful means of peace." The point is that shared need can build trust. Another key voice was John Maynard Keynes. He argued that when a country has full employment, the risk of unrest drops. Keynes wrote, "When people have work, they have a stake in stability." He believed that jobs act like a glue that holds society together. In modern terms, the glue is still the same. People who earn a living are less likely to turn to violence. The idea that resources affect peace is not new. In ancient Greece, the poet Solon warned that unequal wealth could spark revolt. He said, "A city that feeds the poor will not be shaken by the rich." This simple line shows that even in old times, thinkers saw a link between sharing and calm. Today, many scholars build on those early thoughts. They note that when resources are spread fairly, people feel respected. When they are hoarded, anger can grow. The pattern repeats in many places. A clear everyday example shows how a family budget can bring peace at home. Imagine a family of 4 sitting around a kitchen table. They write down the money they earn, the bills they must pay, and the amount they can set aside for fun. By talking openly, each member knows where the money goes. If a child wants a new bike, the family can discuss if the budget allows it. This open talk stops hidden resentment. The family feels safe because everyone knows the plan. The calm that comes from this sharing mirrors the calm that can spread in a larger community. A second everyday example is a town that creates a community garden. Residents gather a small piece of land, bring seeds, and share tools. Each week they meet to plant, water, and harvest together. The garden gives fresh food, saves money, and creates a place for neighbors to chat. When a problem arises, such as a pest, they solve it together. The garden becomes a symbol of cooperation. The shared work builds trust, and the town feels more peaceful. These simple stories show the power of sharing. They also illustrate a larger point. When resources are used together, people see each other as partners, not rivals. But not everyone agrees that money always helps peace. One counter-argument says that wealth creates more conflict. Some argue that rich nations compete for markets, and that competition can lead to wars over resources. They point to the scramble for Africa in the 19th century, where European powers fought over land and minerals. The claim is that the more wealth a country has, the more it wants to protect and expand it, which can spark conflict. A second counter-argument holds that poor people are naturally peaceful. This view says that when people have little, they focus on survival and avoid fighting. It suggests that poverty itself is a shield against war, because there is no surplus to fund armies. Critics of this view point out that many uprisings have come from the poor, showing that lack of resources can also fuel anger. Both counter-arguments have some truth, but they miss the middle ground. Wealth can be used for aggression, but it can also fund education, health, and social safety nets that lower tension. Poverty can calm some people, but it can also breed desperation. The key is how resources are managed, not the amount alone. Historical anecdotes give weight to the idea that sharing can bring peace. After World War I, the United States launched the Marshall Plan. The plan sent money, food, and equipment to rebuild Europe. Countries that received aid could rebuild factories, create jobs, and restore housing. The plan also required cooperation among the receiving nations. As a result, the continent saw a long stretch of peace. A quote from Secretary of State George Marshall captures the spirit. "Our policy is to help Europe recover, for a stable Europe is a safer world." The Marshall Plan shows how an infusion of resources, tied to cooperation, helped end conflict. Another story comes from 19th century England. In the town of Rochdale, a group of weavers formed a cooperative store in 1844. They pooled their money, bought goods in bulk, and sold them at fair prices to members. The cooperative gave workers more control over their income and reduced exploitation. The success of the Rochdale model spread across the country and inspired many similar groups. The cooperative spirit helped lower labor unrest and built a sense of community. The founder, William Cooper, wrote, "When workers share the fruits of their labor, they find strength in unity." This anecdote shows that sharing resources can turn potential conflict into cooperation. Modern interpretations keep these lessons alive. Today, economists talk about inclusive growth. The term means that economic progress should reach all layers of society. When growth includes the poor, it reduces the chance that they will feel left out. Inclusive growth is a modern way of saying that sharing wealth helps peace. Another modern idea is social entrepreneurship. People start businesses that aim to solve social problems while making a profit. These ventures often reinvest earnings into the community. For example, a company that sells solar panels may also fund schools in the same region. By linking profit with public good, the business creates jobs and improves living standards, which can lower tension. Analogies help explain the link between resources and peace. Think of a garden hose. If the water flows evenly, every plant gets enough to grow. If the flow is blocked for some plants, they wilt while others thrive. The garden represents a society, and the water is the resources. When the flow is fair, the garden stays healthy. When it is uneven, some plants die, and the garden looks messy. The same idea works for money, jobs, and food in a community. Another analogy compares a ship's crew to a nation. If the captain shares food and rest time fairly, the crew works together and the ship moves smoothly. If the captain hoards supplies for a few, the crew becomes mutinous. The ship's journey is like a nation's path to peace. Fair sharing keeps the crew united, while hoarding creates rebellion. Real-world applications of these ideas appear in many places. In Brazil, a program called Bolsa Familia gives cash to low-income families if children attend school. The money helps families meet basic needs, and the school condition raises education levels. The program has been linked to lower crime rates in the areas where it operates. The success shows how a modest flow of money tied to shared goals can calm a community. In Rwanda, after the 1994 genocide, the government promoted Umuganda, a weekly community work day. Citizens gather to clean streets, build schools, or plant trees. The work is unpaid, but it builds trust among neighbors who once fought each other. The shared labor helps heal wounds and creates a sense of common purpose. The practice illustrates how joint effort, even without money, can bring calm. The link between economics and peace also appears in the field of climate policy. Climate change threatens resources like water and food. When countries cooperate to cut emissions, they also share technology and funding. This cooperation can prevent future conflicts over scarce resources. The Paris Agreement is an example where nations pledged to help each other. The agreement includes a clause that richer countries will support poorer ones. By sharing resources, the world aims to keep peace as the climate shifts. A quote from Mahatma Gandhi reinforces the idea that sharing is peace. He said, "The world has enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed." The line reminds listeners that the problem is not lack, but how resources are used. When people use resources wisely and share, the need for conflict drops. The discussion of resources also ties back to the earlier sections on justice and conflict. Justice asks how fairness is achieved. Conflict asks why people fight. Economic factors sit at the crossroads of both. When resources are distributed fairly, justice is served and conflict lessens. When they are hoarded, injustice grows and conflict can flare. Looking at the arguments again, the main point is that resources can be a bridge or a barrier. The bridge works when people see that sharing brings safety and opportunity. The barrier forms when a few hold most of the wealth and the rest feel left out. The bridge can be built with policies like progressive taxes, universal healthcare, or public education. The barrier can be reinforced by tax breaks for the rich, deregulation that favors big firms, or cuts to social programs. The counter-argument that wealth always brings conflict points to historical wars fought over oil, gold, or land. The counter-argument that poverty always brings peace points to societies that have lived simply and avoided war. Both miss the nuance that the use of wealth or the experience of poverty matters more than the raw amount. When wealth is used to fund military expansion, it can cause war. When wealth is used to fund schools, health, and social safety nets, it can keep peace. When poverty forces people to fight for basic needs, it can spark unrest. When poverty is accompanied by strong community support, it can keep people calm. The modern world offers many tools to shape the outcome. Digital platforms can help people pool money for common projects, like crowdfunding a new park. These platforms let neighbors see where funds go, building trust. Governments can use data to spot areas where resources are lacking and target help there. The tools make sharing easier than ever before. A final everyday example shows how a group of friends can use a shared budget to plan a vacation. Each friend puts a small amount of money into a common pot each month. By the time the trip arrives, they have enough to cover travel, food, and lodging. The shared plan avoids arguments about who pays what. The friends feel closer because they all contributed. The small act of pooling money mirrors larger acts of nations pooling resources for peacekeeping missions. In summary, the story of economics and peace is about balance. It is about seeing money, jobs, and sharing not as isolated facts, but as threads that tie people together. When those threads are strong, the fabric of society stays calm. When they are weak, the fabric tears and conflict appears. The lessons from Kant, Keynes, the Marshall Plan, and the Rochdale Cooperatives all point to one simple truth. Fair sharing builds peace, while unfair hoarding invites strife. The challenge for every generation is to keep the sharing alive, to make sure that resources flow in ways that help all, and to remember that peace grows best where people feel they have a stake in the common good. The United Nations was born from a desire to stop wars before they began. Its roots go back to the League of Nations, an organization created after the First World War. The League was meant to be a place where countries could talk instead of fight. Woodrow Wilson, the US president at the time, wrote, "The League of Nations shall be a league of peace." The idea was simple. If nations could meet, they could solve problems with words. The League failed to stop the rise of new wars, but its lessons helped shape the United Nations. The UN Charter opens with the words, "We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save future generations from the scourge of war." Those words still guide the work of the UN today. The UN is a big group of almost every country on Earth. Its main job is to keep the peace. It does this by bringing leaders together, by sending peacekeepers to places where fighting has stopped, and by making rules that all members agree to follow. The idea is similar to a school council that steps in when bullying starts. In a school, a council of students and teachers listens to each side, tries to understand why the problem happened, and then decides on a fair solution. The council does not punish without hearing both sides. It works to calm the situation so that learning can continue. The United Nations works in the same way, only on a global scale. It listens to nations, tries to understand the reasons behind conflict, and then helps find a calm path forward. Another everyday picture helps to see what the UN does. Imagine a neighborhood watch that walks the streets at night, making sure no one feels unsafe. The watch does not have the power to lock doors or write laws, but it shows presence, it talks to people, and it calls the police when needed. The watch also helps neighbors trust each other, because they see that someone is looking out for them. The United Nations acts like a worldwide neighborhood watch. It cannot force every country to stop fighting, but it can send messages, send observers, and send troops that are approved by many nations. Those troops act as a calm presence, showing that the world is watching and cares. Peacekeeping missions are the most visible part of the UN's work. One modern example took place in the African country of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Violence there had displaced millions and caused untold suffering. The United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the DRC, known as MONUSCO, sent soldiers, police officers, and civilian staff to protect civilians. The mission set up safe zones, helped deliver food, and worked with local leaders to stop the fighting. The peacekeepers did not end the war in one day. but they saved many lives and gave people a chance to breathe. The mission shows how a global institution can act like a neighborhood watch, stepping in when danger is near. The UN also runs a system of courts that handle disputes between countries. The International Court of Justice, sometimes called the World Court, hears cases where nations claim that another has broken a rule. The court does not have an army, but its decisions carry moral weight. When a country follows the court's ruling, it shows respect for the rule of law, which is a key part of lasting peace. The court's work links back to the idea of justice that was discussed earlier. Justice means that people get what they deserve, and that includes nations. When a country feels that it has been treated fairly, it is less likely to turn to war. Economic stability is also a piece of the peace puzzle. The United Nations runs programs that help poor countries grow their economies, build schools, and improve healthcare. When people have jobs and food, they are less likely to join violent groups. The UN's development work ties back to the economic section of the philosophy of peace. It shows that peace is not just the absence of fighting, but also the presence of opportunity. When a community can earn enough to feed its children, the temptation to fight over scarce resources drops. Forgiveness also plays a role in the UN's work. After a conflict ends, the UN often helps set up truth and reconciliation commissions. These groups let victims tell their stories and ask perpetrators to admit what they did. The process is meant to heal wounds, not just punish. In South Africa, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission helped the country move from apartheid to a more peaceful society. The UN supported similar efforts in places like Sierra Leone, where former fighters confessed their crimes and asked for forgiveness. The act of saying sorry and being heard helps stop the cycle of revenge, which is a key idea in the forgiveness part of peace philosophy. The UN structure includes many parts that each focus on a different area. The General Assembly is a big meeting where every country has a voice. The Security Council has 5 permanent members with special voting power, plus 10 rotating members. The Security Council can decide to send peacekeepers or impose sanctions. Some people argue that this makes the UN too slow to act. They say that, because many countries must agree, the process can take weeks or months, while a conflict may be raging now. This objection points to the fact that a school council may need to call a meeting, wait for all teachers, and then decide, while a bully may already be hurting a student. The criticism is that the UN's size and need for consensus can delay help. Another common objection says that the UN favors powerful countries. The 5 permanent members of the Security Council, China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, each have a veto. This means they can block any resolution they do not like, even if most other nations agree. Critics say this gives the big powers a way to protect their own interests, while smaller nations may feel ignored. For example, when a conflict involves a permanent member, the Security Council may be unable to act. This can look like the UN is picking sides, which hurts its credibility. Supporters of the UN answer these objections by pointing to the many successes the organization has achieved. The UN helped end the war in the Middle East in 1973 with a ceasefire that saved many lives. The UN's peacekeeping mission in Liberia helped bring an end to a brutal civil war, allowing elections to be held. In each case, the UN acted as a calm presence that gave the warring sides a chance to stop fighting and talk. These examples show that even a slow process can be worth it when it leads to lasting peace. The League of Nations, the UN's predecessor, provides a historical anecdote that helps explain why the world tried again. After World War I, the world was exhausted and wanted a new way to avoid another massive conflict. The League was set up with a council and an assembly, and it tried to settle disputes through discussion. However, when Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, the League could not stop it. The lack of enforcement power and the absence of major powers like the United States weakened the League. The failure taught future leaders that a peace organization needed both broad membership and the ability to act when needed. That lesson shaped the UN's design, giving it a Security Council with enforcement powers and a wider membership. A modern anecdote illustrates how the UN can work despite its challenges. In 2013, the UN sent a peacekeeping force to the Central African Republic, a country torn by sectarian violence. The mission, known as MINUSCA, set up safe zones in the capital, Bangui, and helped deliver humanitarian aid. The peacekeepers also trained local police and supported the government in holding elections. While the mission faced attacks and criticism, it succeeded in reducing the number of large-scale clashes and allowed thousands of displaced people to return home. The story shows that even in a place where powerful countries have limited interest, the UN can still make a difference. The UN's work also reaches into the daily lives of ordinary people. The United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, provides vaccines, clean water, and education to children in conflict zones. When a child receives a vaccine, the risk of disease drops, and the child can stay in school instead of being forced to work or join an armed group. This simple act of care contributes to a more peaceful future, because educated children are less likely to become fighters. The connection to economics is clear. Healthier, better educated citizens help their economies grow, which in turn reduces the pressure that can lead to war. Quotes from primary sources help to keep the ideas vivid. In a speech at the opening of the United Nations in 1945, U.S. Secretary of State Edward Stettinius Jr. said, "The United Nations is the instrument through which the world will keep the peace." The words capture the hope that the world placed in this new institution. Later, in 1992, former UN Secretary General Boutros Ghali wrote, "Peace is not merely the absence of war. It is a condition of life that must be created and maintained." The quote links peace to the everyday condition of life, reminding listeners that peace is a living thing that needs care. The philosophy of peace ties together many ideas. Justice means that nations and people receive fair treatment. Economics means that people have enough to live on, reducing the urge to fight over resources. Forgiveness means that after a conflict, wounds can heal instead of staying open. The United Nations tries to bring all three together by creating rules, justice, helping economies grow, economics, and supporting truth-telling and reconciliation, forgiveness. The UN builds a foundation for lasting calm. Analogies help to see how each part works. Think of the school council again. When a student is bullied, the council does not just punish the bully. It also looks at why the bully acted that way, helps the victim feel safe again, and works to change the school culture so bullying becomes rare. The UN does the same with war. It looks at the reasons behind conflict, such as poverty, injustice, or fear, helps victims of war, and tries to change the international culture so that fighting becomes unusual. The neighborhood watch analogy also shows the limits of power. A watch can call the police, but it cannot replace the police. Similarly, the UN can call for action, can send peacekeepers, and can set up courts, but it cannot replace a country's own government. The success of the UN often depends on the willingness of nations to cooperate. When many countries work together, the UN can act like a strong neighborhood watch, keeping the streets safe. When few cooperate, its power fades, just as a watch loses influence if only a few neighbors participate. The objections about speed and bias are real, and they matter. In fast-moving crises, the time it takes for the UN to gather votes can feel too long. Yet the same careful process can prevent rash decisions that make a conflict worse. The bias objection reminds that power can shape outcomes. The UN's design tries to balance power by giving all nations a voice in the General Assembly, while giving the Security Council the ability to act quickly. The tension between fairness and speed is a core part of the peace philosophy. The story of the League of Nations shows that a single failure can teach a whole generation. The League's inability to stop aggression taught that a peace organization must have both authority and broad support. The UN learned from this by giving the Security Council the power to impose sanctions or approve peacekeepers, while still keeping a forum where every nation can speak. This balance aims to avoid the mistakes of the past. The modern peacekeeping mission in the Congo shows how the UN can adapt. The mission uses not only soldiers, but also civilian experts who help rebuild schools, health clinics, and local courts. By mixing security with development, the mission tries to create the conditions for peace that last after the troops leave. The approach reflects the idea that peace is more than silence. It is a life where people can work, learn, and forgive. When the UN works well, its impact can be felt in everyday life. A farmer in a war-torn region who receives a seed grant from a UN development program can plant crops instead of joining a militia. A teacher who receives training from a UN education program can teach children. The gentle voice of the narrator returns after the earlier discussion of why peace matters and how ideas of non-violence have shaped history. The earlier parts spoke about the thoughts of Gandhi, of Martin Luther King Jr., of the ancient teachings of Confucius. They showed how big ideas can grow from small deeds. Now the focus turns to the everyday actions that any person can try. The aim is to show how a simple habit can become a quiet force for a more peaceful world. First, the narrator asks the listener to pause before speaking. Listening before speaking is a tiny step, but it can change the tone of a whole conversation. When a person truly hears what another says, the other person feels respected. Respect is a seed of peace. The narrator describes a scene in a small kitchen. A child asks a parent why the sky is blue. The parent does not rush to answer with a lecture. Instead, the parent leans in, looks at the child's eyes and says, "I hear you want to know." The child feels safe to ask more questions. The simple act of listening opens a space where anger and misunderstanding are less likely to grow. Second, the narrator suggests helping a neighbor with a small chore. It could be bringing in groceries, watering a plant, or sweeping a porch. The act does not need to be grand. The narrator tells the story of Mrs. Alvarez, who lives in a city block where many families speak different languages. One rainy afternoon, a young man named Sam notices that Mrs. Alvarez's trash cans are overflowing. He knocks on her door, offers to take the bags to the curb, and stays for a cup of tea. Mrs. Alvarez smiles, thanks him, and later invites Sam's mother to a family dinner. That small help built a bridge between two households that might otherwise have stayed apart. Third, the narrator brings up planting a tree together. A group of neighbors decides to plant a maple in the park. They meet on a Saturday morning, bring shovels, and dig a hole side by side. While the soil is turned, they talk about their hopes for the neighborhood. The tree will grow tall, give shade, and become a place where children can play. The act of planting a tree is a clear example of creating something lasting that benefits many. The narrator notes that the tree will stand for years after the people who planted it have moved on, reminding everyone that peace can be rooted in shared care for the earth. Fourth, the narrator mentions sharing a meal with a new friend. Food is a natural way to lower walls. A student named Lena meets a new classmate, Omar, who moved from another country. Lena invites Omar to bring a dish from his home and to share it with the rest of the class. The classroom smells of spices and fresh bread. As they eat, the students ask gentle questions about each other's cultures. The simple act of sharing food creates a feeling of belonging. The narrator points out that the memory of that meal stays with the students, helping them see differences as something to celebrate rather than fear. These 4 steps, listening before speaking, helping a neighbor, planting a tree, sharing a meal, are not isolated. They are linked by a common thread. Each one invites a moment of attention, a pause that lets kindness grow. The narrator reminds the listener that peace is not a distant goal that only leaders can reach. It is a habit that can be practiced in a hallway, on a street corner, or in a kitchen. The narrator now presents 2 common doubts that many people voice. The first doubt is the belief that small actions do not matter. Some say that a single conversation or a single tree will not change the world. The narrator replies with a story from a quiet village in Japan. In that village, each family agreed to write a note of thanks to a neighbor once a month. At first, the note seemed trivial. Over a year, the villagers reported that they felt less lonely, argued less, and helped each other more often. The village crime rate dropped, and the community felt safer. The narrator quotes a local elder who wrote, "A single kind word can move a heart more than a loud shout can move a crowd." The story shows that many tiny acts can add up to a big shift. The second doubt is the idea that peace work is too hard. Some think that trying to be peaceful requires a lot of time, money, or special skill. The narrator counters this by telling the story of a high school that introduced a quiet hour each afternoon. The school did not spend extra money. It simply asked teachers to give students 10 minutes to sit quietly, read, or draw. At first, some students grumbled. After a few weeks, the school counselor reported that students were calmer, arguments in the hallway fell, and test scores rose a little. The quiet hour became a habit that helped students manage stress without any special equipment. The narrator quotes the principal, who said, "Peace starts with a pause." The example shows that peace work can be simple and does not need a huge budget. The narrator now moves to real-world applications of these ideas. In a city in Brazil, a group of volunteers started a nighttime walk program. Every evening, a handful of residents walked together through the neighborhood, carrying lanterns and greeting each other. The program began because a local shop owner was worried about rising theft. The walkers did not carry weapons. They simply walked, talked, and made their presence known. Within 3 months, the number of reported crimes fell by 20%. The community felt more connected, and the fear that once kept doors shut began to loosen. This story illustrates how a small, regular act, walking together, can change the safety of an entire area. Another example comes from a school in Canada that introduced a quiet hour as a way to lower stress. The school set aside 1 hour each week where no bells rang, no announcements were made, and students could choose a quiet activity. The school observed that students were less likely to bring up fights, and teachers reported that the classroom atmosphere improved. The quiet hour gave students a chance to breathe, to think, and to reset. The narrator notes that the idea spread to nearby schools, showing how a simple practice can travel beyond its original walls. The narrator now ties these stories back to the ideas explored earlier in the video. Earlier, the discussion covered the philosophical roots of peace, from the ancient belief that the world is one family to modern calls for global justice. Those ideas are not just theories. They are invitations to act. The practical steps described now are ways to live those ideas. When a person listens before speaking, they are putting the ancient teaching of respect for the other into daily life. When a person helps a neighbor, they are echoing the moral of the golden rule: treat others as you would like to be treated. When a group plants a tree, they are acting on the belief that caring for the earth is part of caring for each other. When a person shares a meal, they are practicing the hospitality that many traditions hold dear. The narrator also returns to the words of Mahatma Gandhi, who wrote, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." This quote appears again, now attached to the concrete actions described. The narrator reminds the listener that the service of others does not have to be a grand project. It can be a smile, a listening ear, a shared seat at a table. The narrator also cites Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "Puss is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a way of being." The narrator points out that each of the steps listed is a way of being, a daily habit that shapes how a person moves through the world. To make the ideas even clearer, the narrator offers two analogies. The first analogy compares piecework to planting a garden. A gardener does not expect a single seed to fill the whole plot at once. He plants many seeds, waters them, pulls weeds, and watches them grow over time. Some seeds sprout quickly, others take longer. In the same way, each small act of kindness is a seed. Some will bloom right away, like a shared meal that creates a new friendship. Others may take years, like a tree that provides shade for future generations. The second analogy compares piecework to building a bridge. A bridge is made of many planks, bolts, and ropes. One plank alone cannot hold a traveler, but together they form a sturdy path. Each kind act is a plank that helps others cross the gap of misunderstanding. The narrator now presents a final set of practical steps that viewers can try this week. First, pick one conversation and practice listening fully before responding. Put the phone away, make eye contact, and repeat back what the other person said. Second, choose one neighbor to help with a small chore. Third, organize a short walk with a few friends in a local park and bring a small shovel to plant a sapling together. Fourth, invite a new person to share a snack or a cup of tea. The narrator encourages the listener to write down these actions in a notebook to track how they feel after each step and to notice any ripple effects. The narrator also reminds the listener that doubts may arise again. If the feeling that "me action does not matter" returns, the narrator suggests remembering the night time walk program and the quiet hour story. Those changes began with just a few people. If the feeling that piecework is too hard appears, the narrator suggests starting with the simplest step, listening before speaking. That step needs no money, no tools, only a moment of attention. Finally, the narrator ties everything together. The philosophy of peace teaches that peace is both an idea and a practice. The ideas give direction. The practices turn direction into movement. The everyday actions described are the small movements that, when added together, create a larger flow toward a calmer, kinder world. The narrator ends with a gentle reminder that each listener holds a quiet power. By choosing to listen, to help, to plant, and to share, a person adds a thread to the fabric of peace, one gentle thread at a time. The calm voice fades, leaving the listener with a sense that peace is not a far-off dream, but a collection of small, doable steps that start right now.